Welcome back to the Mysteria podcast. We got a new guest and a new location for the next few episodes, which is kind of fun. And I am very pleased to welcome Dave Bucket Colwell to the show today. Dave is a guitar player extraordinaire, and he's played with many incredible acts, including Humble Pie, Bad Company, the Jones Gang, just to name a few. And I am also eagerly awaiting the release of your third solo album.
Yeah, yeah.
Perfect. So that's coming out later this year, correct?
Hopefully so. Yeah. I mean, we've got it. We've got it all written now. We've got 14 songs written. Probably about the only good thing about lockdown. Yeah, we're just waiting to start recording. My partner in the band, Bucket's Rebel Heart, is the songwriter with me and the drummer. But he lives in Spain, so we're waiting until he can come over here, to start recording, which hopefully won't be too long.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Yeah, so I'm excited for that. The I haven't actually heard the first album. Is it Guitars, Beers, and Tears?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I mean that was the first one that I did, and the I mean I've got lots of good friends in the business, and they all agreed to, mainly singers, do a song for me. So I've got several guys singing lead vocals: Adrian Smith from Iron Maiden, Danny Bose from Thunder, Spike from the Choir Boys. Um, let's see, Steve Conti from the New York Dolls, and lots of my pals did it. Great fun to record. Harry James from Thunder on drums, Jazz Lockery on bass. Um, when it came out, it was difficult to get DJs etc. to understand the concept of it. They were like, so is Adrian going on the road with you? And it's, well, no, he's a bit busy playing to millions of people in Rio. So with the next album, Paul and I decided we wanted a band, so Bucket's Rebel Heart, and we had the same lead singer, a guy called Jim Stapley, who's an old friend of mine. He sang with the Jones Gang also. So we've got more of a band identity for that album, which is carried on for this new record.
Fantastic. Yeah, it'll be a good time. I really enjoyed the second album. So
Yeah.
And is that just is the album just called Bucket's Rebel Heart?
No, it's called 20 Good Summers.
That's right.
Which we figure that's what we got left if we behave ourselves a bit.
Yeah, sounds about right.
The new album is going to be called Chasing Satellites.
Fantastic.
So,
looking forward to that.
Yeah, looking forward to getting in the studio. It'd be good fun.
Mm-hmm. So I know I kind of jumped right in there, but we'll back it up a little bit, and we'll try and have some sequence to the podcast as best as we can. But obviously England, born and raised.
Yes, just in North London, really.
And so when did guitar become something that was a real part of you?
I started annoying my parents very early. I think probably 5 or 6. I had one of those plastic Beatles guitars, and I would never put it down. Drove them absolutely nuts. So they got me guitar lessons when I was probably about 8 years old, actually. Which I loved. So, I mean, in England, you go to primary school until you're 11. By that time, I was probably a better guitar player than the teacher. Yeah, and just carried on, really. I mean, that was classically trained. And I went to the Royal College of Music as an outpatient over the weekends and stuff. So, yeah, I mean, started putting bands together at school, but I saw Humble Pie in Hyde Park, which was exactly 50 years ago this weekend, actually.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I think I was like 14 or something, and that changed my life forever. And who'd have thought I'd get to actually play an Humble Pie,
Yeah, exactly. Well, and let me back you up a little bit. So, I mean, that proficient by age 11?
Well, I was,
Pretty good.
yeah, I just loved it, and to be fair, the school music teacher wasn't very good. So, there's levels here.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I know because I play guitar as well, and I've been playing for, I guess I was about 18 or 19 when I was graduating high school when I bought my first one. It was a Epiphone Les Paul standard, I guess.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Very sunburst one, quite a nice one. I really enjoyed that one. And then you get the little starter amp and all that. But
yeah.
when, like for you, when did you? So I guess 14, yeah. So then you made the transition to electric guitar.
Yes, pretty much. Yeah. I think I had an electric guitar before that. The perennial Watkins Rapier, like a £20 guitar, which I bought with my money from the paper round.
As you
But
do.
yeah, got my first guitars, proper ones, I guess, about 14. Yeah.
Hmm. And how about in your family? Is there a bit of a musical gene in your family at all?
None whatsoever. None whatsoever. I mean, my dad couldn't even play a record player, bless him. But I must say, I mean, mum and dad were really, really supportive right from the start. And, I mean, my dad worked for the BBC, um, and was a lighting film director and all sorts. So, I mean, my first bands, we had, because he was an electrician as well, we had homemade lighting rigs and everything. And I mean, and he got us gigs like crazy. I mean, I was on the road proper at 16. I mean, we'd signed to a Mecca agency. We had our own tour bus and everything. All thanks to my dad, really.
And so, what kind of shows were you doing then?
Oh, it varied. I mean, because we were all underage to go in pubs, we had to sign all sorts of waivers and stuff. But I mean, we went on tour opening for the Black and White Minstrels, which you probably can't say nowadays, but that was like a vaudeville show. Um, um, yeah, I mean, various sort of theatre things, and then I guess around I must have been 17 when pub rock hit.
Mm.
That's kind of when we fell out with my dad, who was managing us, because we all bought Marshall stacks, and of course the PA was tiny, and we go in these pubs and blow the roof off and get barred, So it was time for Dad to move on and the rest of it. So and then pub rock hit, and that's when I seriously, we had a band called Hotline. Actually, before that, we had Shady Lady, and we were playing 5 nights a week, every week, all year long. Just resident in pubs, like say the Thomas Becket on a Monday, Windsor Castle on a Tuesday, Brecknock on a Wednesday, and we just did that for 2 years. I mean, that's where we sort of learned our stagecraft, if you like. I mean, it's the same with a lot of bands like Iron Maiden. We all grew up in this London pub scene. I mean, I first met my dear friend Adrian in Iron Maiden. He was in a band called Urchin, and I was in a band called Angel Street, and we were resident at all the same pubs in England.
It's kind of funny because, so obviously, like I grew up in Vancouver, and not the best music scene out of Vancouver. I mean, we have a few pretty good bands, a lot of talented musicians, definitely.
Yeah,
But my era is not particularly great for that. But one of the things that it kind of like you telling me that sort of reminds me of like LA in like the 80s, where you have like all
yeah,
these and like all the down Sunset Strip, right? And it's just that
yeah.
live
There's
music.
a complete scene going on. I mean, when we were playing all these pubs, our goal was to get to play the Marquee in London. Everybody wanted to play. And we eventually did. We all had supporting slots at the Marquee. You got paid about a fiver, but it didn't matter. It was the Marquee. And I think, I mean, the ACDC's first they did one pub gig, and then they did a month-long residency at the Marquee on, I think, Monday nights. And my band at the time, 720, did the following month, so, and everyone from all the bands used to come down and see each other. It was a great community in London. It really was. People used to come from far and wide, and you just end up at the bar with, guys and Thin Lizzy and, just everyone.
Well, when I was talking to Paul Guerin, one of the things, I'm not sure if we talked about it on the podcast or if we were just kind of chit-chatting off the air, but that was one of the things that really stood out to me, was just the community side of it. Like, it's not like you're trying to step over each other. You're actually all trying to lift each other up.
It was great. It was great. I mean, if someone got a good gig, a big gig, you borrow a couple of cabinets off the other guys, I mean, going back to my, when I was very young, I mean, my grandmother sort of brought me up because Dad was on the road doing his movie TV thing, and my mum worked, so my nan was there, and she used to feed all the bands. They'd all come round because no one had any money. And even if I wasn't there, a van would pull up and she'd feed them all.
Yeah, well, that's your band manager right there, just keeping everybody happy and feeding them all. Yeah, exactly. Oh my goodness, yeah. But that must make a huge difference too, to have that level of support, because music is one of those things. I guess kind of any arts, whether acting or music, where it's to make it into the scene is not guaranteed, and so then it's kind of like, but to have that support at least, and the encouragement to keep going, that must have been crucial.
Oh, absolutely. And I do feel for aspiring young bands now. I mean, not only with the difficulty of the pandemic, even before that, there just aren't those small grassroots venues anymore. You end up paying to play at half of them, and and now it's even worse because a lot of these venues have closed. I mean, I can think of one venue in the vicinity of London that's a sort of a pub rock thing, is the Cavern in Rains Park, and that's about the only place. All the rest of the next level up, you need a promoter, you need an agent, you need to sell 500 tickets.
And what do you think attributed to that change? And what kind of year are we talking, like 90s or a little bit later on, where that really died down?
So a bit later on, yeah. I mean, I started seriously in the late 70s, and we worked all through the 80s and all that. I mean, the 90s, I toured America non-stop with Bad Company, for 11, 12 years. So, but in that period, some sort of change. I mean, a lot of tribute bands became popular, and their music's good luck to them and all that. But a lot of these venues would only book tribute bands because they packed it out, and you got a bit of a thing going on. If everyone's a tribute band, where's the new music going to come from? You've got to balance it, really, I think.
Well, and it doesn't give anyone a chance to get discovered, because you're playing AC/DC cover tunes, and it doesn't give that creative ability.
Yeah, no, I mean, since my very first band, we might have did a few covers, but we always played original songs. I started writing songs as soon as I could play guitar. It's just all part and parcel of it. Now at home, I mean, I don't ever pick a guitar up to practice, so to speak. I pick it up and start writing something.
And with the writing process, so you said that you started writing pretty much as soon as you were good enough to actually write a song.
Yeah, as soon as I could figure 3 chords together, I was writing songs. Yeah.
And how, I don't really know kind of how to ask the question, other than just like, how did that process come together for you? Was it something where you kind of were inspired by some of the people that you listened to, or did it just kind of come naturally to you?
I was inspired by, especially in a guitar sense, and when I was younger, bands like Humble Pie, Mott the Hoople, Free. That's the style of guitar that I naturally evolved into playing, very bluesy rock, you know. So yeah, a lot of the time, the early writing, it was all based around the guitar, but it was later on that I realised the importance of lyrics, and you know, I love lyrics now. I mean, my favourite writers like Bruce Springsteen and Steve Earle, you know, where they're actually telling a story. It's not just yeah, yeah, baby, you know. It takes a good song like that will take the listener somewhere else, you know. I mean, and try and be a bit, you know, let them make their own mind up. I mean, not too literal, you know, a bit ambiguous about it, you know.
It's funny that you mentioned Free, because on Animal Beat, from I
Yeah,
think the first track of 20 Good
yeah,
Summers, the solo in there really reminds me of All Right Now, because I like how it's got, yeah, because it's got kind of like two solos. There's like kind of like a bridge solo and then like the long solo, and it's kind of, it's got that it's very airy. You know what I mean? It has that
yeah.
Paul Kossoff style to it. You can
Well,
really
I'm a Paul Kossoff nut, you know, always have been. I mean, I was lucky enough to see him live 4 times, I think, you know, and it just absolutely incredible, you know, just mind blowing, really. But yeah, and you're right. It's what he doesn't play as much as what he does play. You know, Billy Gibbons is the same. You know, Gary Rossington from Skinner is the same. That's the sort of guitar playing that I really like. You know, you can sort of touch someone with one note if it's the right one, delivered the right way. You know.
And listening to those American bands, how much American music were you listening to when you were growing up? Was that pretty accessible over in the UK at that time?
Yeah, it was. I mean, my dear friend Barry from school. I mean, we'd just straight after school we'd go down to the record store. I mean, in those days you got a plethora of albums coming out all the time, so it was. I mean, we bought anything that was on Asylum Records, for example. So that was like all your sort of Americanas, you know, people, all Joe Walsh and the Eagles, you know, and that also got me into a lot of lyric writing because a lot of it was country based as well, you know.
Well, and it's a different, and you kind of, I think you said it right when you're mentioning Springsteen and that, because the and Steve Earle, the style of writing is very unique in that sense.
Yeah, yeah, it is very much so. And I mean, I do love country. I tend to prefer the sort of outlaw country, if you like, rather than, you know, I don't like the achy breaky heart nonsense, you know. But I mean, a lot of the bands I love now, like, oh God, I mean, there's just loads of them. They've all got black in the name, you know. Black Smoke, you know. Black Smoke.
Mm.
Um, yeah, you know the ones I mean. I really love them.
Blackberry Smoke.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely love them. And there are a lot of country influences. Um, I actually, going along, you know, along this vein. I mean, way down the line in '96, I signed a publishing deal with Disney in Hollywood to go to Nashville to write country music.
Through Disney?
Yeah, yeah.
How
Disney
did
are
that come
real.
about?
Well, they're a huge company, Disney, you know, and Nashville at that time was the music publishing center of the world. I mean, for example, Warner Brothers had 120 staff writers just knocking songs out on Music Row because a lot of the country artists don't write their own songs. So these guys would all write the songs and pitch them to artists and producers, etc. So yeah, myself, Robert Hart, who was in Bad Company at the time, and Simon Kirke, we all signed to Disney, and I ended up going to Nashville for about a year.
What
Great
was
times. I mean, that's all changed again now as well. I mean, back then, 120 staff writers. I think Warner Brothers have got 4 now. All the big producers came in from LA, and the producers write the music as well and bring their buddies in. So it's it's very difficult to get in now.
And that idea of having just loads of staff writers, is that something that's, because I've never heard of that. Is that something that is somewhat common in the music industry?
It was back then. It
Mm.
was then. I mean, and when I signed the contract, I mean, straight away they sent me off to Nashville for I think 15 days, and they put me with at least two, sometimes three different co-writers every day, starting at 9 in the morning, and these guys usually finish at 5 at night. And you're writing in a house on Music Row, you can hear the guys next door writing in D, so you start writing. I called the guy up, I said, I can't work like this, ain't how I work. He said, well, you've got to, you've taken the money. I said, well, it's just not how I work. I can't do it. I said, he said, what do you propose to do? So I said, well, just give me a couple of days, and I called a friend of mine, Jim Delacroce, who has a press office for a lot of country artists. And he took me out that evening to see a country singer called John Anderson, who was great, and invited me to come and write with him for his new album. And that I met Vince Gill and Alison Krauss as well. So I called the guy up, said, look, I'm working with these people. He's like, how on earth did you do that?
Yeah, that would be pretty incredible. What was that experience like? That must have just been insane.
Oh, it was great. I loved it. Yeah, really, really good. Great town, Nashville.
Yeah, I know. I'm pretty sure that's where Chris Stapleton got his start. I think he was a session
Yes.
guy. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even now you get, pre-pandemic, I keep having to say that, but
Yeah.
you get 400 acts a week playing Nashville, and they're all stunningly brilliant. I mean, there's times when you think, oh boy, I think I'm just going to hang up the guitar, when you see them go down. It's like, absolutely incredible.
And I mean, we kind of mentioned that earlier, but I'm wondering, like, yeah, that must be frustrating because there is so much talent, and then it's just like to break through. It just seems like it just doesn't happen for, well, obviously, because only very few people make a lot of the music, of the popular music, right? So it just seems like,
Yeah,
is that just a numbers thing? It's just,
it's the same for anything involved that that you've got a goal in life, that anything that makes big money, sport, acting, anything like that, you're gonna, there's a lot of people want to do it, so you just gotta find your way through and keep motivated, and you know sort of do the best you can, really. And
well, and even
yeah,
for you,
I've been very lucky in the bands I've been in also. So when I went to Nashville, so here's a guitar player from Bad Company. Would you like to write with him? So straight away you're at you're at the high end of what's going on.
yeah, exactly. Well, and so, and what I was going to say earlier was just the fact that, so you're 16, 17, and you're touring like Kiss. Like you're right out there, like and the places that you mentioned, they're like, for at least I lived in the UK, so I kind of know where those places are. But that's like a lot of distance, like geographically. Like we're not talking like, oh, just down the street. Like you're actually
Oh,
doing.
no. I mean, we bought a coach. When I think, yeah, I was the oldest one in the band, 16. And we bought a coach for £600, and Adrian's band Urchin had a coach also. Theirs was painted all white, so we painted ours all black, and we'd sleep in it, and yeah, had a bit of trouble getting insured to drive it. Oops.
And would that have been your dad driving that back then?
No, it was us. We'd share it out. Well, the drummer had an older brother. He'd come along a lot of the time and drive. Yeah.
There you go. So you could share the responsibility there.
Yeah.
And,
But I mean, it was great. Some of the things, we drove after a really late show and everyone's completely tired and it's pitch black. Let's just pull over and go to sleep, you know. So we pulled over in these, we've got camp beds with sleeping bags. And it's really cold, and sort of woke up in the morning and you could hear this on the door. Everyone's like, oh God, you know, we're being attacked or something, you know. So we're sharing the toolkit out. And we eventually ripped the door open, like, go on then, go on. And it was just a cow. We were like loads of cows and they were licking the door. However, it's a good job they did, because the front two wheels were on one side of a railway track and the back wheels were on the other side. So if a train had come along, it would have cut the whole thing in half.
Yeah, that's what happens when teenagers are driving a coach. Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, that'll be a good scare.
Yeah.
Jeez. So okay, so you're doing that. You're touring for and sorry, and how long were you doing that for with that particular band? Till about 18, 19?
With those bands, Angel Street, Hotline, Shady Lady, that was all about 4 or 5 years. But then we put a band together called 720, and things got a bit more serious. We had a manager, and we started getting support tours. You know, we supported Black Sabbath on the Mob Rules tour, so we were playing proper, you know, Hammersmith Odeon size venues and all that. You know, and supporting UFO and what have you.
Did you meet Ozzy?
Blizzard of Oz. Huh? Yeah, yeah, we supported Blizzard of Oz. Yeah,
Yeah, and
he
how
was
was
great.
that? That must have been
Oh,
that must have
yeah,
been
great. Yeah, I would lovely bloke. You know, I mean, he just a real generous guy. Obviously, he was a bit pickled now and then, but you know, lovely guy. Um, yeah, and you get to, you know, going back, you get to learn stagecraft. Then, you know, like playing big stages and stuff like that. You know, and I'd met a few years before when we were doing the pub rock scene. That was the first time I met Paul Sampson. He was a guitar player and he had a band called Refugee. And I'd been classically trained. I was still a bit reserved on guitar, you know. When I saw Paul, he was just like, you know, full on, you know, sounded like Leslie West in a pub, you know. And he said, "Come and play with my band for a couple of songs." And I walked on, and he just went like that on everything, put everything on 10, and kicked me up the backside, and shoved me up the front. You know, if you're going to do a solo, do a solo. So that, you know, you start to learn stuff like that, how to control the guitar, and you know, a lot of volume and all that, which is a part of it.
And for something like that, is that just simply trial and error and keep working at it and find what works?
Well, and being lucky enough to have someone, you know, helping you and showing you. You know, Paul did. I mean, Mick Rouse was one of my favourite players as well, and he was so generous. You know, when I joined his band, oh, you take this solo, boy. No, go on, you do this. You know, and same as thing as Paul, shove you up the front. You know, and so that sort of encouragement, but still treating you on the same level, not like you're a new kid or anything. You know, it's really really good.
One of the things that I've been really interested in lately is understanding creativity. So like the actual like process behind like the psychological processes behind creativity. And one of the things that kind of tangential to that, but is sort of related, and it reminds me of what you're talking about right now, is the how helpful it is to have uh, not maybe a mentor is a little too official, but
Yeah,
mentor of sorts, because you get to learn from them, but also it gives you the confidence because you know that if it goes south for you, he'll pick it up and recover it for you, right?
yeah, exactly that. I mean, having that, going back to what you said before, having that support, you know, in learning your trade and something you love is invaluable. Really is.
Well, and that's what allows you to it's the exponential improvement, because then
Yeah,
it's slow going, and then all of a sudden you get the big curve. And then that's when things, you know, especially the confidence side too. I mean, once you, because I'm sure for you, once you kind of figured your rough style on like on stage, how to kind of, you know, what to do, when to do it, once you kind of figured that out, I'm sure that made just a tremendous improvement in your playing too.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Um, it's you find your niche, you know. I mean, I've always kind of been, you know, either the band leader or definitely, you know, the one of the main songwriters and stuff like that, you know. So it's yeah, there's a certain way of, you know. I mean, I'm not really a, you know, an amazing rhythm player or an amazing lead player, but I do kick up a din.
I think you're pretty damn good. So you can be humble all you want, but yeah, exactly. And so now you're playing and so that was 720 was the band?
Yeah, 720, yeah.
720. And how did you go about getting a manager? Is that something that you would like audition for?
Um,
Or what was the
well, no,
process?
they had a three-piece band together first, and the drummer Paul Edwards, who is now the drummer in Rebel Heart. I mean, the Rebel Heart album we made 4 years ago, we should have made 30 years ago, you know, but we didn't. So yeah, and I mean that manager back in the day, I mean, had no musical experience whatsoever. It was just he put us on a wage. That's what it was. It was the finance to be able to do what we wanted to do and grow. You
And so what year are we taught? This is about the 80s?
know. Yeah. So that's yeah. So through the 80s, um, and then I got approached. Mick Rouston was one of my heroes, and everybody knew that in the scene, you know. And we were at this. All the musicians used to go to a place called the Funny Farm, which was an after hours club, you know. And this guy came out. He said, "Are you the guy that likes Mick Rouse?" I said, "Yeah, yeah." He said, "Oh, I'm his roadie. He's putting a band together. Do you want to come and try out?" So I said, "Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah." So he said, "We'll come to Nomi's studio tomorrow." And I went down to Nomi's studio, and they gave me a cassette with 2 songs on it. It said, "Go and listen to this in your car, and then come in," you know. And the drummer was Chris Slade, who'd been with AC/DC, and you know, and Pino Palladino, who's now with the Who, was the bass player, and there was just a Marshall Stack, you know. And then sat around in the studio was Lemmy, and Brian Robertson, Thin Lizzy, and I think Dave Gilmour wandered in, you know. And it's like,
Oh.
oh crap, you know. So I just again, I put everything on 10 and just started blasting. And Chris stood up and he went, "Stop, stop," you know, because Mick wasn't even there. He said, "Stop, stop." Got on one of those, the first mobile phones. Remember those things like a brick? It's a huge thing. He got on the phone to Mick. He said, "Yep, we found him. He's just like a little version of you." So I got the gig, and you know, they said, "I'll turn up here in 4 days' time" or something, which happened to be it is in Henley. Mick had a huge house then. I turned up and there's Porsches and Ferraris and all this. I went, geez. Knocked on the door. It's 5 in the afternoon, and a butler opened the door. You know, I said, "I'm here to see Mick Rouse," and he said, "Mr. Mick isn't up yet." You know, Mick never used to get up till 6 or 7 in them days. So he did get up. It's like he was lovely to meet him. I was in awe. I've never met him. He's one of my heroes. He's like, "Oh, all right, mate. You know, come on, we'll go down to the pub." You know, so gone into this tiny pub that was owned by his roadie's sister or something like that. And which as I walked in, and there's Alvin Lee and Dave Gilmour are sat there, and there's nobody else in the pub. You know, we're just having a few drinks, and the door opened. This guy came in, and had a little Indian guy had a look around, did a thumbs up, and in walked George Harrison. And it's like, Jesus, you know, we're
Holy
just sitting there
cow.
having a drink. And about midnight, they decide they want to rehearse, you know. So we go back to Dave Gilmour, had a huge soundstage studio, and you know, it's Chris on drums, Mick started playing lead, and then it went round to Dave Gilmour playing lead, and it's coming my way. I'm like, oh my god, But yeah, I got the gig.
And how old were you then? 20?
Uh, yeah, that's so. Let's see, going back, that's mid-80s, really. That was so. Yeah, 22, 23.
Oh my God. Wow. Unbelievable.
And we rehearsed. I mean, straight away, Mick put me on wages. I think we only rehearsed 3 times in like 18 months, and did 4 pub gigs. And that was it. So yeah, off and running. And he went off and played with Dave Gilmour on a world tour, and then came back. And that's when we started. I guess about 89, 88, 89, we started the Adrian Smith and Project, which Adrian was off the road with Iron Maiden for a while. So he put a band together with me and Andy from 720. And we did a couple of gigs. We were called the Entire Population of Hackney. We were called the Sherman Tankers. I won't explain that one to you. And yeah, we did like the Marquee in London. We did the Red Line in Gravesend. And then we decided we wanted to make a record. So we started writing, and went off to the Bahamas to write the ASAP album, Silver and Gold.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
How'd you end up in the Bahamas for that one? Other than it's nice.
Adrian wasn't allowed back in England for taxi things and all that, so he flew me and Andy out to the Bahamas. What terrible!
That's like a Bond villain move. That's a good move.
Yeah. So yeah, after that came back, that album came out, but then Bad Company called me. Mick didn't want to go on the road particularly, so he put me up to go on the road with Bad Company for him. So that was with the singer Brian Howe. They just released Holy Water, so we went on a huge tour. It lasted nearly 2 years long. All in America. Played every state in America 4 times, I think.
So that must have been that would have been a really hectic tour schedule, though, like busy at least.
It was, but I mean, it was great. I mean, we had a fantastic tour bus, fantastic crew, fantastic hotels. I'd never really played in America before, so to go to America with a band with a top 5 album was pretty amazing.
Yeah, I'd imagine. So I'm trying to think like what I could ask you about that American tour, because I feel like there's like so many stories in there, but I don't know. Is there anything that off the top of your head that stands out? I mean, what was your impression? Had you been to the States much prior to that tour?
No, not at all. I mean, I think I've been once to Florida when I was about 18 for a vacation, and that was Miami, and that's all I've been. So I've never been, yeah. So it was definitely an eye opener. A fantastic way to be introduced to America,
And that would have been a stadium tour as well, right?
Well, we started off in theatres, and then it went, because the album sold so well, we went straight into playing sheds, outdoor sheds, and we hooked up with Damn Yankees, and that's why that became the biggest selling tour that year, Bad Company and Damn Yankees.
And that would have been a double bill.
Yeah, we flip-flopped headlining. Like one night we'd headline, the next night they would.
That's a band that I don't think a lot of people know about or remember, but I love Damn Yankees. They're fantastic.
Well, it was a really unusual pair. I mean, very unusual pairing for, you got Tommy Shaw and Jack Blades, both great singers, both little fellas, and quite melodic, and then you got the other fella.
the big mane of hair. Oh yeah.
Oh dear me. Yeah, he's definitely the whitest guitar player I've ever heard in my life.
Gotta love it. That's hilarious. Oh, that's good. I love that. That's great. And so then you toured with them for 2-year tour.
2-year tour, and then we came off the road to record Here Comes Trouble.
Hmm.
That was the second album. I'd already done a live album with Brian Howe as well, but then we did the studio album Here Comes Trouble, went back on tour with that. So that went pretty much right through from 1990 to middle of 94, I guess. And then Brian left and we got Robert Hart in to sing with Bad Company, which was great. He's a great singer. We did Company of Strangers album straight away with him, and we toured that for about a year. Then did Stories Told and Untold, another album. So that took us through to about 97, I think.
And was that touring mostly in the States?
Yeah, we did. I mean, with the Brian Howe lineup and with the Robert lineup, we did one European tour each, you know, sort of a London, you know, I think 5 gigs in England and 10 or 15 around Germany and France and all that. So just one tour each. The rest of it was all America.
Kind of a tangential question, but yeah, really random one. But it seems like Germany is always a great country for blues and rock. They seem like they're just great for that.
They're fantastic. I mean, there's acts that are absolutely huge in Germany that can't get arrested anywhere else in the world. But I mean, Robert Hart now has been singing for Manfred Mann for 5 years. And every summer they go out playing festivals every weekend. You know, really big festivals. They're all really well run because they're all run by the government, you know, and the money's good and everything. So you got bands like Manfred Mann, Barclay James Harvest. I toured over there with a guy called Roger Chapman, who is also massive over there, you know.
Yeah, because it seems like because I'm a huge Kiss fan, so I know everything about Kiss, but I know that they really big in, like, for them, Japan was always a really big one. Japan seems great.
Yeah,
Well, even Cheap Trick, their big
yeah, yeah,
album, live at Budokan, right?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
but they're another one that seems like a great place for that. But what are some of the, maybe not unusual, but maybe some like atypical places that you played that kind of stand out in that way?
Um, I mean, some of the bands you mentioned. I mean, we used to do package tours with Bad Company, so a lot of them were with Lynyrd Skynyrd. We did endless tours with Skynyrd and Foreigner.
Mm.
We played a lot with Cheap Trick, and we just had great fun with them. I mean, you get a 3-band bill playing a shed, so you pack it out. It'd be great fun. Couple of I remember we played the old airfield in Vegas, which was a massive show. It was like 120,000 people or something like that. But the skies opened. It was torrential rain, and Skinner just wouldn't go on. Period. And Foreigner tried to get to the stage and turned back and wouldn't go on either. So it was just, we said, well, we'll go on, and then we had a ramp going from the stage out into the crowd, which wasn't covered.
Mm.
And the opening song was Can't Get Enough, and Robert just grabbed me and took me straight out on his ramp. I mean, I couldn't, but the rain was, but the crowd went mental, because we'd actually gone on.
And that's the thing too. How can you even play? Well, okay, that sounds like it was awfully rainy, but in general, like, can you even play in the rain? Because, like, wouldn't your stuff get wet? Like,
Well, yeah, I mean, you're not really going to get electrocuted on a wireless system. for
Yeah.
example, you know. But it was, I mean, luckily it was Can't Get Enough, which is in open tuning, so there's not a great deal to do, you know, because I'm flipping all over the place, you know. But we only lasted half a song. We came back undercover. I looked like drowned rats, you know.
Yeah, that must be. And is that one of the largest crowds that you've played for?
Yeah, that's one of the biggest. Yeah, it's great.
I mean, what's like, even just walking on stage and seeing that must be like, how do you kind of process that? Because that just, wow, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't get, you know, frightened or anything. I do get a buzz, obviously, you know, your blood starts pumping, you know, but you do get used to it. And again, being a part of a band that you trust and your friends and all that, it's just, here we go, you know, it's like a gang, you know. It's like great. Some of the shows, I think we did a huge show in New York somewhere, and John McEnroe, a tennis player, was a friend of mine, and he came with his brother. And at that time, we had a kabuki curtain, and so, you know, the curtain's closed. We're on stage, and at a certain point, you know, bang, and the curtain drops, and there's the, you know, and John's brother was on stage talking to me just like me and you are, you know. And my guitar tech's going like, away, and then boom, the curtain comes down. He's like, ah, he nearly died, you know.
Yeah, you got a shock to the system for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so now where did we leave off?
So,
Back
we
in 97?
about 97, yeah. So then came back, and yeah, I did a few things, like toured with Roger Chapman and various other sort of things, and started putting together, I guess, songs for my first album. But then got a call from Bad Company again. Paul Rodgers had come back. Do I want to tour with them, with Paul Rodgers? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So that was great. I mean, that was with Simon on drums and Rick Wills on bass, who had been with Foreigner but was with me in Bad Company through all the Brian Howe and Robert Hart as well. So us three had been playing together for 10 years already. So we went to New York, and I think there was 2 days booked for rehearsals. Paul didn't show up the first day. The second day, he just came in and got in the rehearsal room, did this, you know, just sang the set, thanks lads, and walked out, and that was it. And we didn't even sound check. We went straight to the first show. I don't think we sound checked for about 7 shows, actually. We just went straight on and did it. That was on a big tour as well with Styx, and can't remember the other fella's name. What was that song? The Stroke me.
Oh, Billy Squire?
Yeah. So big tour, so no sound check, just on and did it, you know. It's great.
And that note, you and Paul have both said that as well, where it's like, yeah, like we won't do a sound check or we won't do a rehearsal. We'll just, is that just because, I mean, professionals, but is that just kind of is that like a musician thing? You have to rebel against the
No, I mean, you know, with those bands, we're lucky enough to have great crew and that. I mean, I've had some fantastic guitar techs, you know. It's all done, you know. You come get off the bus, walk on the stage, you know, they put your guitar on and it's all there. I mean, I used to have little crosses on the stage with a sweet spot where it'd feed back, you know. And yeah, you know, when you're doing 90 shows in one run, you know, to go to a sound check every day is a pain in the neck, you know. When you want to, there's other stuff to do, a bit of sightseeing, you know. Yeah, I mean, usually, obviously, we'd be touring all year long, and a lot of the Bad Company set was people want to hear the old songs, so it's pointless rehearsing them over and over again. But when you write a new album, the writing process and the rehearsing to record it, you know the songs pretty well also, so you don't really need to rehearse them before you go out and play them.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I guess that would sort of be like the equivalent of like a pro athlete kind of doing like, not like skipping on the fundamentals, but just like doing some stuff that's like, like we're
Yeah,
kind of up here and
you don't want to peak early, do you? Let's face it. I mean, we're rehearsing tomorrow with the Jones Gang. So we got 2 shows at the weekend, and we haven't played for 16 months. We haven't done any gigs. So we got a rehearsal tomorrow, which started off at, sort of midday to about 6, and then now it's gone from that 1 o'clock till 4. Well, we could knock it on the head at 3 because of the traffic. So it's getting short and short.
Yeah. We want to go home.
And the trouble is, with all these bands I've been in, we have such a great time. When you do get together for rehearsal, all you do end up doing is nattering and chatting and catching up.
Yeah,
I mean, we've got to play something now. Why?
Well, and actually, again, totally off topic. I don't know how it came to me, but when, like, as far as like gear is concerned, I want to get a little bit technical with that kind of geeky stuff because I think it's interesting. But I noticed on uh, with when was this in Sweden? I saw a video of you playing. So for the Buckets Rebel Heart. So was that 20? You actually mentioned it to me as well. I can't remember the name. Was it Rockoplast?
The Sweden Rock.
Sweden Rock. That's it. Okay. And the setup you have, Black Star?
Yeah.
Setup was unreal.
Yeah, I mean, Black Star was 5 guys that used to work with Marshall. I've been with Marshall for absolutely years. And some things went on there, and 5 of the guys from Marshall, including 2 of the guys that designed the amps, and the head of sales and the PR guy and all that, they all left and put together Black Star. And I knew the guys very well, and they said, would I voice out some of their sort of prototype amps and everything, and I loved them. So I've been using Black Star ever since, I just use the amp I use. They don't actually do anymore. The Series 1 100-watt head. Just a great amp.
And with touring, because obviously, touring with Bad Company and like these like big, and like well established musicians, how much liberty did you have to kind of pick your own rig, or was it mostly you just kind of went with what they had? Because I'm sure what they had was unbelievable, but
no, I always had my own rig, and I always had my own guitar tech as well. I mean, when, for example, when Paul Rodgers came back into Bad Company, we'd already had a crew, but he wanted to use his crew. A lot of the guys were Canadian and what have you. And I said, well, that's fine, but I want my guitar tech, because you're in their hands, really, So no, I've always used my own rig.
And how has your rig changed over the years? Has it changed much? I mean, obviously you said Marshall was one of your favorites for sure, but
I mean, when I was using Marshalls on those big tours, I'd have 4 heads running through 6 cabinets, but with the Black Star stuff, I haven't done any real big tours like we did in those days, like really long tours. So I tend to use 100-watt head. With Humble Pie, I use that 1 head through 2 cabinets, and I do have another spare head and another 2 cabinets linked up.
And guitar-wise, same kind of guitars that you've used. How has that changed over the years?
I've always been pretty much a traditionalist. I mean, when I first saw Mick Ralphs in Mott the Hoople, and he had a Les Paul Jr., and just with a single P90. I just that raw, and then Leslie West was using them. Steve Marriott was using the Epiphone ones. So I love P90 pickups. So I mean, I think I had my first Les Paul Junior probably 1978. I think I paid £250 for it or something, But I've still, I mean, that's still one of my favourite guitars. I've got a 1956 Les Paul Junior, which I use for a lot of the rhythm stuff I'm recording on the album. Les Paul Custom got, and Les Paul Standard. Yeah, I'm pretty much a Les Paul, but and Telecasters. I love Telecasters as well.
Well, I was going to say, like, with all the time you spent in the States, I'm like, there's got to be a Fender in there somewhere.
Yeah, I'm not that fond of Stratocasters. There's a bit of a different tension on the strings on a Strat, and I bend a lot, and it's Gibson's a bit more forgiving for the bending and what have you. But I mean, I do like Telecasters because you can give them a real thwacking, and also I use a lot of guitars from a company called Vintage, which are lower end guitars, but I mean, real playable. I mean, I've got a Lemon Drop Les Paul. I've got three Les Pauls actually vintage, and they're all great guitars. Sound really good. Wilkinson pickups in them, and I've got a couple of vintage Telecasters with Fishman power bridges on, so you can get an acoustic as well as the electric out of it. They did make a signature guitar for me, Fret King, which is the high end of vintage. They made a Dave Bucket Colwell Les Paul Junior type guitar. I gave them my 56 and said, just make that. And they did as much as they could, various little things for copyright and all that, but great guitars.
And sorry, how long have you been using vintage for? Relatively recently?
No, about 5-6 years, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. I was with the guitar player mate of mine, Jeff Whitehall. We used to do some of the Marshall shows at trade fairs with Nick O from Iron Maiden, and we were wandering around the Frankfurt show, and Jeff said, "Oh, you've got to come and have a look at these, young man. Come on, write up your Strasser, And I signed a deal with them that day, so I've been endorsing them ever since. And I turned on Paul from the Choir Boys, and that a lot of people use them now. Bernie Marsden's got some good guitars.
Mm-hmm. I haven't played any of those, but I figure I'm like Andertons will probably have a few, so I should probably whip down there, try a few out.
Yeah.
And so, how about pedals? Well, I figure I might as well ask you all the geeky stuff together.
Oh, I'm not much of a pedal bloke, really. I mean, I just have a tuner, chorus, and maybe a delay pedal, but I'm not bothered if I don't have a delay pedal, really. I use the volume control on the guitar a lot because a lot of the time I'm the only guitarist, so you can use quite. The thing with Bad Company that the quiet bits were really, really quiet, which makes the choruses really powerful when you turn it up. That's the art of playing in a three-piece, really. I use those tiny little Moore pedals. Have you seen those tiny little things? They are
like they're like the real small, like they're like this big kind of thing.
Yeah. They're just a tuner, a multi-chorus, and a delay.
Even when you were younger, not much of a pedal guy, just kind of, I guess, a volume guy.
Yeah, no, not. I mean, it's pointless for me having boosting pedals because anything that made it louder, I'd have on all the time.
Yeah, sounds about right. Yeah.
Well, going back to when my dad, was having problems with us being thrown out of gigs for being too loud. My dad was an engineer. He got down to one gig, and we noticed there was these little black boxes sort of fitted onto the front of our Marshalls where the volume knobs are, and with like cables coming out the bottom, like wires. And honestly, you go into a solo and you'd hear whirr, and he'd physically turn the volume knob down. He'd be up the back, like made it out of alarm clock bits or something like that, to physically turn the volume down. Of course, you'd lose all your sustain and everything. But no, I've never been much for a pedal bloke, really.
And so even on the 20 Good Summers album, like distortion or overdrive or just volume mostly?
Just volume. Yeah, I mean, the amps I use have got quite a bit of gain on them. Yeah. But,
Right.
yeah, I mean, also, I mean, Paul going to tell you we've discovered these things called a Blue guitar. It's like a tiny little thing like that, but it's 100-watt valve amp. You can put it in your hand luggage.
Oh.
A guy called Thomas Blue made it. And you can actually drive, take it to a gig in your handbag. You drive a 4x12 of it, and it'll sound just like a Marshall 100-watt head. It's incredible. That's what I use to record demos with. Is just no speaker cabinet, just a record out.
Yeah, it's a little demon then. Holy cow.
Yeah, they sound fantastic.
Yeah, I was joking with a friend of mine back home because I bought it was a couple years ago from Anderton's as well. The nice thing about living in Guildford is Anderton's was a 10-minute walk. Even where I am right now, 10-minute walk. I'm right there. But
it's a great store. Great store.
It's a dangerous store. Don't go in there with a wallet.
No, I don't go in there at all. I just call them up and have them send me stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But I bought a orange micro terror, so it's literally like this tiny, teeny little thing, and I can't play it louder than like 1.5 because this is a beast. Like, this thing will blow the roof off the place. It's just this little tiny, but unbelievable.
They're incredible, some of the things now. I mean, particularly with bass amps, you get like a 800-watt bass amp you can put in your pocket,
Yeah, that stuff's it's powerful stuff. But and that must be the thing too. Like even for you, like have you noticed that the technology has? I mean, obviously all technology's got better as the time has rolled on, but as far as the stuff that you use to tour and to record, have you noticed just kind of a change in that at all, or?
Completely. I mean, Foreigner, for example, Foreigner have no amps on stage whatsoever. Everyone's on in-ears, and the amps are like way back in another hall behind the stage in a flight case. When you just there's a mic in the flight case on the cabinet, you just plug that in. A friend of mine, Rick Wills, has been doing some show. He was in original in Foreigner, and they've got him out doing a couple of songs now on a few gigs, and he can't, he said there's just no amps. All you can hear is this drum kit, because usually we'd have monitors from hell, the drums would sound like an avalanche, and he says all you can hear is this little tapping. That's pretty weird. I mean, I've never used the in-ears on stage. I mean, with Bad Company, it's only a 3-piece. I can understand if you're in the Eagles, and all the rest of it, but I don't like to use them really.
And that must have been somewhat more recent, like the in-ear thing. Like we're talking like the 80s maybe, or even later?
Even later, I think. Yeah, I mean, the first time I came across them, Paul Rogers wanted us to wear them. That was 2000.
Oh,
I lasted about half a song.
Yeah, he's coming at you with all the high-tech stuff. And I guess, was he coming back from Queen? Touring with Queen? Or did he tour with Queen after that?
Queen was after that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. They would have had the real swanky stuff for that tour, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I did a gig with Brian May, and he had his, his number one famous AC30, and I had a Black Star 45-watt combo right next to him, and we both sort of, went up to. We just arrived, went up to both hit an A chord, both loud as hell, and he looked, he went, actually they sound the same, don't they? I said, pretty close. So it's just two of them.
Yeah. And what show was that you played with Brian?
It was a party for a publisher guy, a private party, and it's the band was Rick Wills on bass again, a singer from Ireland called Ronan Kavanagh, who was touring with me with the Bucket and Co thing, and it was just a throwaway thing. They said, Brian May wants you to play with him. Do some Queen songs. It's like, okay. So I said, what Queen songs do you want to do? So we got a list of about 6. Of course, they're all the piano ones. I'm like, great. So I spent hours and hours learning how to do something that sounded like it on the guitar for all these piano songs. When we get to the sound check, I said, should we start with this one? He went, no, I don't want to play that. Oh, okay. Let's try this one. No, I don't want to play that either. Let's do some bagpipe. Let's do some of your stuff. I'm like, gee, I've been rehearsing all week for this. But it was great fun. Real nice guy.
And actually, I probably should have asked you that earlier, but since you brought it up, it's got me thinking. So when you were younger, and even like, like we're talking like young teenager, then kind of throughout, would you learn songs by just kind of messing around with by ear, like with a record or I guess maybe CD a bit later on?
Yeah. And I used to go to, loads of gigs as well. I mean, I was, hardly ever at school. I was always chasing some band round somewhere, So I'd always be down the front so I could see how Mick Rouse was playing,
Oh, wow. So that would actually be, you literally would just be like, okay, I guess we'll just go see it firsthand.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's the thing that surprises me is just like for someone like me, where it's like, YouTube or, Amazon, Prime or whatever, you can find concerts or concert footage or shows or like these sort of different things. But I mean, I really respect the just the ear and the patience to just try and, all right, hear 3 notes and then try and find something. And
well, I mean, there's a lot of those things as well, like particularly in America, tab and whatnot, and it's all written down and everything like that. And I was invited to visit a 3rd semester guitar class at the Berklee School of Music in Boston, and I mean, there must have been 25 students in there, I guess, and half of them had sort of, I don't know, 7-string guitars and all that. It's all pretty weird, all new stuff. And these were really competent kid players, young players. And the tutor, they're young, they don't know who I am, And the teacher was like, and here we have, this is Mick Bucket from Bad Company, and he starts playing Can't Get Enough, And I sort of said, well, I said, that's wrong. And he's like, what do you mean it's wrong? I've got the tab here. I said, sorry, mate, it's wrong. So of course the kids, all their ears are perking up now. I probably shouldn't have done it to the poor teacher, But he said, well, here, you show me how. I said, well, and he had this PRS guitar on, like thousands of pounds worth. I said, well, I can't show you on that. It's open. You'd probably break the string on that. Has anyone got a real guitar? And he went, whoa, He gave me a Telecaster, and you tune it up to C, open C. So the bottom E string, for example, goes all the way up to C, and the top E goes up to G. So it's really highly strung. And then I, played. The kids loved it, and blah blah blah. And they, the principal from Berklee was there. He said, "Oh, that's great." He said, "That's going to be on the teaching list now, Bucket." We went out. I did feel pretty bad about throwing the teacher under the bus, so to speak.
Little ribbing's okay.
Yeah.
Little jab is fine. Yeah. And when was that? Where you were invited to that?
Let me see. That would have been about 10 years ago because I was putting my first solo album together, and I'd got all these great singers on it. And the record company guy at the time, he said, "Look, this is all well and good." He said, "Do you fancy? What do you think about this idea? We contact Berkeley and say we're doing this album. Send us a recording of your 10 best rock singers. We'll pick one and we'll do a song with him on the album as well, you know." So I said, "Yeah, that'd be great." So they sent the tapes over, and I said, "I do insist on coming over and recording him myself though. And so we went over to one of their studios, and this kid came in. I wrote the song, I think, 2 hours before I got on the plane. Went over there, and he sang it great. It's really good. So I spent about 3 or 4 days there. Seth Romano, his name was, I remember, and did a great job.
Did he know who you were at least? At least after he got the call, then he knew for sure.
Oh yeah, no, he knew. Yeah, he knew. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's good. Yeah, that's good. And so I forget where we left off. I went the geeky route, and then now
Okay,
I remember where
we with
Paul Rogers, that company.
Paul Rogers, yeah, and we finished up recording. Probably the proudest thing I've ever done was the Merchants of Cool album DVD, which we recorded 2 shows, one in Denver and one in LA. And massive shoot, 12 cameras and all that. Slash joined us for a couple of songs, and Neil Schon from Journey. I mean, it's probably my thing I'm most proud of.
That's pretty cool. I don't even know what to say. I'm like, oh man, that is pretty cool. And where? So Denver. What venue?
Oh, I can't remember.
Oh, okay. I was
No
thinking,
idea.
like, what was it? But Red Rocks isn't in Denver, is it? It's in Colorado.
No, because we were recording all this and DVD, we wanted like little theaters. So the one in California was the Anaheim House of Blues or something like that.
Oh,
so
small venue.
it's a couple of thousand people. But it's really good, great sound and everything.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up Slash because Not in This Lifetime tour, there we go, where Guns N' Roses reunited, where they're just doing like ridiculous like football stadium tour of North America and Europe, like just absurd stuff. But it was funny because we saw Guns N' Roses in Seattle sometime in the summer, and then like 3 months later see Slash with Miles Kennedy at a theater, a few thousand people in Vancouver, and it's like this guy was just like mentally, it's just like, wow, like, but even for you, that must be a really cool thing to, obviously your band, like the lineup is absurd, and then you're playing like this kind of, it's must have a much more intimate feel to it.
It does, yeah. I mean, it's with Bad Company, we did 2 tours with Bon Jovi. We were on their private jet we did a tour of Canada, actually. It was absolutely like, stadiums and all that. And then, I saw Richie in a club with 300 people in Nashville, just, I mean, with Kenny Jones who I'm playing with at the weekend. I mean, the tours he did with the Faces and the Who, and the Small Faces before that, and we're playing, I think we sold 400 tickets on Sunday, so it's, people like seeing it up close. And, I mean, people say, do you prefer doing a normal stadium gigs or little gigs? I mean, yeah, I prefer the big ones, but it's all fun just to play anyway.
Well, and that's just it. Like, that's kind of what I've been sort of like thinking about when it comes to musicians, like in particular. I think dancers have a bit of that too, it seems like, but I'm not too well versed in that category. But like certainly compared to athletes, where it's like, I mean, obviously they're professional, so like they play, for the team in a set stadium or whatever. But it almost seems like with musicians, there's, I mean, bit of a blanket statement, but generally speaking, like for as far as the passion for playing is concerned, it really seems like there's no ego when it comes to, oh, that place is too small or that place, like it, that doesn't seem to happen very often.
No, I mean it's I mean, in the words of Billy Gibbons, your guts to get paid.
Yeah.
It's our job. So obviously the financial thing comes into it as well. But I mean, I think 2 years ago now, I did a little couple of shows over here, Bucket and Co. And I flew Jimmy Coons, who's the singer with Humble Pie now, with me. I flew him in from New York. Keyboard player came in from Denmark, and I Clive Edwards on drums and Boise on bass, both London. And we booked 2 London gigs. I think the Half Moon Putney and another one, which sold out. And I think I would have just about made even, but I got so excited. I put in 3 more gigs, like Birmingham and Nottingham and somewhere up. So that involves hotels and a van and a blah blah. So I ended up losing a fortune. So you have to sort of reel your neck in sometimes.
Yeah. Eyes are bigger than the stomach sometimes, I guess.
Yeah, we're having such fun, Marcus. It's like, man, let's do some more. This is great. That's why I'm not a manager.
Play everywhere, anywhere, it's fine. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I've always got a bag packed. There's always a guitar in the hall. Just turn me loose, point me in a direction.
Yeah, no, that's what I like to hear. I mean, that's kind of it's funny because it sort of reminds me of because Joe Bonamassa especially is like, because that guy is like, he's so crazy. Like the guy will just tour all, like the guy will tour 300 plus days out of every year, and will do that years in a row. And it's just like the love of music and then performing, and it also, and like you said, like when you're home, you're not going to pick up a guitar to just play. Like you'll pick it up to write something, like you're actively engaging in your craft. But then, the touring thing, I mean, you're engaging in your craft, but then you also have the fun side of making a bit of money, performing in front of people. Like, doesn't get any better than that.
It's what we've been doing for years. I mean, this pandemic thing. I mean, when you got bands that are a real well-oiled machine, for example, Uriah Heep do 260, 275 shows a year. I mean, everywhere, Russia, Greece, all out, and bands in America like Styx and Skinnerd, they just never stop. They do hundreds of shows a year, and to go from that to absolutely nothing, it was murder at first. You get to 6 o'clock and you're getting ready, getting your stage head on. You know what I mean? Wait a minute, no, I'm not going anywhere.
Wearing slippers and
I'm sure a bit of, there's people a lot worse off than us, but it hasn't been easy.
Yeah, and it's all relative, right? I mean, that's the thing. It's like, there's also a lot of unintended consequences from this whole thing. So I know it must be, but at least in England, it seems like it's kind of getting back to normal-ish.
Well, I think it'd be a long time if it's back in the music industry. I don't know if it will be back to how it was ever, to be quite frank. Too much has been lost, but let's not dwell on that.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah. So anyway, I know the tangents. We're going on the tangents, or I'm going on the tangents. But okay, yeah, so, bad company. Did we even move past Bad Company with Paul? I feel like we stopped and then on a tangent.
After Bad Company, that's when we first put the Jones Gang together with Kenny, Robert Hart, Rick Wills, and myself, and we did an album. That was going well from. We did a lot of corporate gigs, you know, Silverstone Racecourse and
Oh,
golf places and all that, you know. And we had a lovely percussion player, Nick Cook. He's a smashing fellow, and he also owned an airfield with several aeroplanes and helicopters. So we flew in and out of everywhere, doing shows for Harley Davidson and all that. But great live band. We do material from the bands we've all been in. So it'd be Small Faces, Faces, Who, Bad Company.
and I wonder with that, as far as I guess that like just intellectual property in general, how does that work playing other people? Oh, well, so you guys were obviously in the bands that you were playing the songs for, but generally
Yeah.
speaking, I always wondered that, like, how does that work? If, like, let's say you want to go play a AC/DC song, maybe because you weren't in AC/DC, you know, would that be something that you could do live, or is it just kind of, is there like the unwritten rule?
No, you can do it, yeah, as long as you know the venue is all hooked up with PRS, the Performing Rights Society. So you know the writers of the songs will get some money for that. So I mean, even like little pubs and bars, you know, they're all registered for PRS. You know, if you have a jukebox in a pub, you have to be registered with PRS.
And is that in England only, or is that pretty much throughout?
No, pretty much without or without throughout the world. I mean, it's not all Performance Rights Society. Some of the companies are different, the collection agencies, if you
Yeah, I know it's a bit of a dry question, but I always wondered that. I'm like, yeah, I wonder how that. Yeah, I just kind of figured, yeah, I wonder, because like it seems like you should be able to just kind of play whatever, but then you also want to, give credit where credit's due,
sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, talk about a tangent. I watched a movie the night before last called Yesterday, which is there's a little singer songwriter bloke playing in pubs and all that, not making any money, and he's about to give up. But he comes out of a gig and there's a power cut all over the world for about 5 seconds, and in that 5 seconds he gets hit by a bus on his bike and wakes up in hospital. When he wakes up, long story short, no one's ever heard of the Beatles. All throughout the world, no one's ever heard of it. So he's sitting there playing a song, and they, wow, that's great. What's that? You know, he's playing the Beatles, and it goes through. And also, he comes massive star all over the world. You know, huge multi-million, playing all Beatles songs because no one's ever heard of them. It's a great movie.
I mean, that's a good turn of events. If you
Yeah.
capitalize on that, that's pretty good.
It's dead funny because Ed Sheeran's in it, and Ed Sheeran sees the thing on YouTube and comes round his house and says, "You're the best song I've heard in 10 years," and takes it on tour. You know? It's good.
There you go. So yeah, PRS was needed in that movie for sure.
Yeah.
Oh,
So yeah, we formed the Jones Gang, did that for a few years, and we're still doing it. And that's when I started putting the Rebel Heart album together 5 years ago now. So we were never intending to be a touring band. It was more of a recording band, doing cherry picking the odd gig like Sweden Rock, you know, because we all live all over the place and it's too expensive, and we're all a bit too old to go around in a chip shop van now, you know.
Yeah. And for that, because you mentioned you have a bunch of people on that album. One of the things that I mentioned to you were the singers on that album.
Yeah.
So good. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Oh, they're really good. I mean, Molly Marriott, the daughter of Steve Marriott, does a lot of the backing vocals. She's great, which leads us on to the next thing. In 2018, I was in Humble Pie in the year 2000 with Jerry Shirley and Greg Ridley, the originals, and Bobby Tench. And that we did an album, Back on Track, which I produced. We did a couple of little tours, but it sort of fell apart. Greg got very ill and sadly passed away. But in 2018, I'm still good friends with Jerry, and he owns the name and everything like that. So we wanted to bring humble pie music back to people, so he let me put a band together to play humble pie music. So I've got Jimmy Coons, American singer from a band called Cactus. And we just hit it off really well. And I went to stay with him in New York, and we put a band together out there. So we went on the road in 2018. So we were just getting started really when all this pandemic stuff hit. But we'll be back out, not this year. It has to all settle down because it's based in America and I can't really go there at the moment. So we're booking stuff for next year.
Yeah. And as far as the future, not too far into the future, but just sort of a little more recent, what are your plans going forward? Obviously, we talked about the new solo album coming out hopefully soon. And is it just kind of...
I mean, there's three things at the minute. We're just getting back into gigging with the Jones Gang. We're making plans for Humble Pie for next year, so that involves a lot of, making a campaign and all the rest of it. And then I'm recording the Rebel Heart album, which hopefully we'll have out this year, hopefully the end of the summer.
Perfect. Yeah, sounds good. Well, I think that's probably a good place to stop. That's about 90 minutes, if you can believe that.
Well,
flies
okay. Absolutely. No, it's been fun, Marcus. I enjoy it.
Yeah, thank you. So I have to say,
I don't think I swore once either. Brilliant.
Pretty good. Yeah. I swear like a trucker too. So it's always, every time I do a podcast, I'm like, don't swear. You sound like an idiot. Don't swear. If I had it my way, it'd be 5 times a sentence. I know I'm terrible at that way. Yeah. But I just have to say, I mean, it's been a few weeks since I've recorded a podcast, but these are so much fun to do. I just love doing these, and I just can't thank you enough for being here. It was great talking with you and answering all my crazy questions and all that. So
good fun.
Great. Thanks so much, Dave. We'll talk soon.
All right. Cheers. Bye.